Number 7. Spider Lizard. Spider Lizard was one of the strangest versions of Spider-Man, appearing in Spectacular Spider-Man issues 39 and 40 back in 1976. It all started with a device called the Innovator, which was originally used to turn Dr. Curtis Connors, the Lizard, back into his human form. But there was a problem. When the device was used, Spider-Man got caught in the rays too, and that led to some serious side effects. At first, Peter started acting differently. He was more aggressive, had no remorse, and became way more violent while fighting crime. Things got really bad when he went up against Chip Martin, aka Schizoid Man. This Spider Lizard not only threatened him, but he also mocked him during the fight. Then, in a shocking moment, he nearly killed Chip in cold blood and had to be physically stopped. But that was just the beginning. His rage built up so much that he fully transformed into the Spider Lizard, gaining all of the Lizard's abilities on top of his Spider-Man abilities. He went on a rampage through the city, and thanks to his tough reptilian skin, bullets couldn't stop him. In the end, the only thing that could bring Peter back was an antidote from Dr. Connors, and once it worked, the Spider Lizard was gone. Number 6. Poison. In Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man issue 3, we're introduced to a version of Peter Parker from Earth 70134. His life plays out just like the Peter we know from Earth 616 until he crosses path with Morlun, a terrifying being who hunts and devours spider people across the multiverse. Morlun absolutely destroys Peter in battle, leaving him so badly injured that he loses an eye. Even after removing his mask, his face is completely unrecognizable. He's rushed to intensive care, barely hanging on. But Morlun isn't finished. He shows up at the hospital to finish Peter off, only to be interrupted by Mary Jane. Without hesitation, Morlun throws her into a wall and brutally snaps her arm. Watching MJ suffer pushes Peter into one final act of defiance. Using his last ounce of strength, he attacks Morlun, but this time, he doesn't fight like Spider-Man. He fights like a spider in the form of a man. Bone-like spikes burst from his forearms, pinning Morlun down. His face twists into something monstrous, and like a real spider feeding on its prey, he starts devouring Morlun's face. By the time he's done, Morlun is dead. Moments later, Peter collapses in MJ's arms, seemingly dying. But his story doesn't end there. In What If Spider-Man the Other, things take a much darker turn. Just like a spider trapping its prey in a cocoon, Peter's body becomes encased, only in this case, it's not to die, but to regenerate. While trapped, he has a vision of the Great Weaver, a mysterious figure who offers him a chance to be reborn, but only if he fully accepts being both a man and a spider. Peter from Earth 616 once accepted this deal, but this Peter refuses. Instead of embracing his transformation, he resists and remains in the cocoon, unable to break free without his spider half. As time passes and Peter's body inches closer to death, the Venom symbiote senses his suffering. Despite all the hatred and rage it carries, Peter was its first host, its first love. Unable to let him die, Venom escapes from its prison and seeks him out. Since Peter had rejected his spider nature, there was now a void, one the symbiote intended to fill. It forcibly bonds with him in a process so agonizing that even the Watcher finds it too horrific to describe. When Peter finally emerges, he is no longer the same. Now, calling himself Poison, he becomes something truly monstrous. He breaks into Aunt May and MJ's home, attempting to take Mary Jane with him. When she refuses, he coldly tells her that if she doesn't come willingly, he'll control her mind and turn her into his perfect companion, one without her own thoughts or emotions, just a puppet for him to manipulate. Before he can act, Wolverine and Luke Cage arrive to stop him, but Poison easily overpowers them, even piercing Wolverine with a stinger. Seeing this, Mary Jane, in a desperate attempt to save herself, agrees to go with Poison, but warns him that every day they spend together, she will make him pay for what he's done to both her and Peter. Surprisingly, Poison doesn't take her. Instead, he just leaves. No one knows why. But before disappearing completely, Poison visits Forest Hill Cemetery, where Gwen Stacy, Peter's first love, is buried. In one final horrifying act, he digs up her body and subjects her to the same gruesome transformation he went through, creating a twisted, monstrous version of his lost love. Number 5. Last Stand Spider-Man. This version of Spider-Man is not just tormented, he's a man out of time. Unlike the original, this future Peter Parker is hardened by tragedy, especially the death of Aunt May. While visiting her grave, the now older and graying Peter is confronted by the police and finds himself facing serious charges, possibly even manslaughter. It's clear that this version of Peter carries a heavy burden of regret, shaped by the harsh world he's lived in. One thing that stands out is his costume. It's not the usual Spider-Man suit, but something darker and more unique, which fits his grizzled persona. His descent into this darker path began when he killed Kraven the Hunter in an act of vengeance, something he never forgave himself for. That moment broke something in him, turning him into a completely different man. At one point, he was married to MJ and even had a son named Ben, but for reasons unknown, he lost her too. In the end, when given the chance to surrender, he refuses and is ultimately shot down by high-tech police, though he goes down fighting. There's not much known about this hardened Spider-Man, but at one point, he even killed Dr. Octopus by stabbing him through the heart with his own tentacle. Number 4. The Superior Spider-Man. The story of the Superior Spider-Man is one of the most unique takes on Spider-Man's legacy. It all starts when Dr. Otto Octavius, better known as Dr. Octopus, manages to switch minds with Peter Parker. Now trapped in Peter's body, Octavius decides he won't just be Spider-Man, he'll be a better Spider-Man. Using both his own intellect and Peter's abilities, he creates something entirely new. Taking on a fresh identity, Octavius begins living a double life, much like Peter did. As a civilian, he becomes Professor Elliot Tolliver, a charismatic young man. But as Spider-Man, he embraces his new role with an obsession, determined to prove he's the superior version of the hero. Even though he devotes himself to fighting crime, it's less about justice and more about proving himself. Unlike Peter's traditional suit, Superior Spider-Man's costume is upgraded with high-tech enhancements from Octavius's own lab. His suit can emit nerve gas and even walk on its own thanks to an advanced AI system. At one point, he even absorbs cosmic power from Tarax the Tamer, powers similar to those of the Silver Surfer, though his human body ultimately couldn't handle them, so he stored them away. Octavius's genius also leads to the creation of Spider-Bots, tiny spider-shaped robots that patrol and help in rescue missions. While he does save people, his arrogance is clear. He sees himself as far more intelligent than those he protects, only saving those he deems worthy. But when a demonic infestation threatens the city, even Superior Spider-Man realizes he can't do everything alone. Despite their rocky history, he teams up with Doctor Strange and together they defeat Master Pandemonium. But there's a darker side to this version of Spider-Man. Octavius is ruthless, far more brutal than Peter ever was. He blinds the Vulture, shatters the Scorpion's jaw, and even kills Waxman, and the villain known as Massacre in Cold Blood. Unlike Waxman, who was a serial killer, Massacre wasn't even fighting back. He was already defeated, already afraid, but Superior Spider-Man executed him anyways. In the end though, Octavius comes to a realization. Despite everything, he cannot escape who he truly is. Eventually, his mind returns to its original state and he goes back to being Dr. Otto Octavius, leaving behind the legacy of the Superior Spider-Man. Number 3. Symbiote Spider-Man. What if Spider-Man never savored his bond with the symbiote? In the universe of Earth TRN 848, Peter Parker never removed the Venom symbiote, meaning Eddie Brock never got his chance to bond with it. Instead, Peter's powers evolved, mimicking Venom's abilities while still allowing him to control his webbing with just his thoughts. By keeping the symbiote came with a heavy price. Peter was haunted by constant nightmares, visions of his past failures, so intense that he compared them to the grief he felt when Uncle Ben died. His decline didn't go unnoticed. MJ saw the change in him, pointing out that he wasn't sleeping and getting worse every day. And she was right. The symbiote was changing Peter, warping his very sense of self. When he faced Hobgoblin, Peter unmasked, beat him down, and even considered killing him. The symbiote encouraged him to do it, marking the start of Peter's descent into brutal violence. He began seeing villains as nothing more than scum, believing only in strength and becoming obsessed with wearing the suit. His attachment was so strong that when Aunt May's house caught on fire, the symbiote convinced him to abandon her, fearing for its own survival over hers. As Peter continued down this dark path, he no longer simply stopped criminals, he executed them. At least 11 people died by his hands, including Hobgoblin, whose skull he crushed with his bare hands. After killing him, instead of feeling remorse, Peter felt shame, not for what he had done, but for how others might see him. He still believed he was their protector and resented the idea that anyone would fear him. His rage boiled over when he confronted J. Jonah Jameson, crushing his hand and threatening to break the other. His intimidation tactics escalated. He didn't just threaten, he acted. When the Kingpin sent Scorpion and Shocker after him, Peter brutally dismembered them and delivered the remains to Kingpin before leaving him permanently disfigured. In the end, Peter's war with the symbiote reached its climax in the final battle inside Avengers headquarters. Somehow, he managed to break free from its influence, finally defeating the creature that had twisted him into something unrecognizable. Afterward, he joined the Fantastic Four and was found innocent of his crimes, as several heroes testified that the symbiote's influence was nearly impossible to resist. Number 2. Ghost Spider. On Earth 11638, Ghost Spider is actually Peter Parker, not to be confused with Gwen Stacy's Ghost Spider. After dying and being resurrected from hell by an alternate reality Bruce Banner, who was also the Sorcerer Supreme, Peter was infused with many souls of the underworld. As his name suggests, Ghost Spider is a mix of Ghost Rider and Spider-Man, which gives him the abilities of both heroes. Before his resurrection, Peter was known as the Amazing Spider-Man, a famous hero in his world. But he wasn't exactly a good guy. Obsessed with gaining more power, he absorbed the essence of Spider-Man from other universes, something he later looked back on as an addiction. Unlike most versions of Peter Parker, this one grew up with Uncle Ben alive and fully supporting his nephew's heroic mission. That even included helping Peter sedate and kill other versions of himself from different dimensions. Eventually, after being convinced of his mistakes by another Spider-Man, Peter had his own powers absorbed, which led to his death. Number 1. Dark Spider-Man. McDonald Gargan, better known as the Scorpion in Earth 616, eventually bonded with the Venom symbiote, becoming stronger and more ruthless than ever before. With the symbiote enhancing his Scorpion abilities, he was no longer just a second-rate villain. He was now a real powerhouse, even surpassing Eddie Brock in raw strength. Like many Venom hosts, Gargan had a violent streak. During a battle with Spider-Man alongside Sinister 12, he and his allies planned to carve their names into Spidey's corpse and hang him from a flagpole. This version of Venom was especially terrifying because he had a habit of eating people. At one point, he even forced a Skrull to shapeshift into Spider-Man just so he could devour it. When Norman Osborn took over the Avengers, he created a special medication for Gargan. This drug allowed him to keep his Venom powers while also making him look like Spider-Man in his black suit. From that moment, Gargan became Osborn's version of Spider-Man, also known as Dark Spider-Man. But instead of being a hero, he became more unhinged, eating limbs and even entire people during fights. Gargan was anything but a noble protector. After defeating General Wolfham, a bank robber, he didn't just take him down. He ate the guy's arm and pocketed some of the stolen money. He then used that cash at a strip club only to kill the stripper afterward and plant her body in J. Jonah Jameson's bed. When a group of villains came after him, he didn't hesitate. Unlike Peter Parker, Dark Spider-Man bit off their leader's limbs and handed the leftovers to the cops. The surviving criminals were so traumatized, they never dared to cross him again. And through it all, Gargan was having the time of his life.